Hey, there we are. Good evening, everybody. Not sure how much of an audience we'll have tonight because I didn't really advertise this very much, but I don't have a lot to say, so it evens out, I guess. Give the room a second to populate here. As always, if you are coming in through the Tour of Idaho Facebook page, it's usually pretty easy. You just give StreamYard your credentials and you should be good to go. If you come in through the motorcyclejazz.com Facebook page or through the YouTube page, you may have to do a little bit more work. If there's any doubt about it, just put your name at the end of any comment that you make so that I know who you are. Hey, Brian, good evening. Let's see who else is there. Jim, good evening. Jim, I just got off the phone with somebody that I'm going to send to you. A friend of mine who's a hello Facebook user is, I've been trying to talk into doing it solo for many, many years, and I'm going to send him your way for a little bit of advice. He's a good dude. Hello, Jeff. It is an exciting day. Hello, Sean. Just so I don't waste anybody's time, again, it'll be a question and answer tonight. We'll talk a little bit about updates, a little bit about the teams that have been out so far and are out today. And then if there's nothing else, then I'm going to send you guys away, and I'm going to go watch one of the last episodes of Better Call Saul, which is on right now as we speak. So for teams that are showing up in the next few days, and there's a whole bunch of them, y'all are getting quite a break because the weather's really going to cool down. It's going to be about 15 degrees cooler starting tomorrow than it has been. Today was awful. It was, God, at my weather station, it was 96 degrees, which means that in places it was around 100. And one team's already retired. Pure Prairie League retired today. And I'll try to get those guys in here tomorrow, and maybe we can do a little bit here in the studio if they come up. But they extreme heat. They said they killed 3 liters of water by the time they got to Oxford Peak. They acknowledged their bikes were too heavy. They were carrying too much stuff, which is really common. And today would have been just a terrible day to be out there with a lot of stuff. It was just awful. Now, the other team that's out today, 2.5, they've pre-ridden day 1 before, and a bunch of questions have come up today about what those guys were up to riding all these bonus sections. Well, they made a little bit of a tactical error today in that they rode a bonus section that didn't do them any immediate good. That first bonus section is only worth a half a point, and if you're a 2-person team and you've pre-ridden day 1, you need 2 points. You need 2 full bonus sections. So they got bonus section and 1 point bonus section a little bit confused. Remember, that first one's only worth half a point. So it'll do them good on down the road, but in terms of what they needed to do today, it did not. So they had to ride the first big one, which is quite easy, and then they also have to do Reed Canyon, and they're going to bail out at the top of Reed, go down Bob Smith, and be out of there. They're actually in Reed Canyon and not a bad time. It's going to be cool by the time they're in there. It's already clouding up because it's going to thunderstorm like a son of a gun tonight. We can already see it coming in, and there's flash flood warnings everywhere. So the only thing I hope is that they get up over Robbers and around that boundary trail before these storms hit. Hello, Sean. Hello, David. Hello, Jeffrey. So they made a little bit of a tactical error, but it didn't slow them down that much, and they got an extra half point in their pocket. But for those of you who are showing up, remember, not all these bonus points or bonus sections are equal. Most of them are worth a single point, but every once in a while, one that's particularly short is just worth a half a point. So you got to bear that in mind. Hello, Ralph. Good to see you, buddy. But anyway, those guys are moving along just fine, and I anticipate that they're going to be here well before the midnight deadline. But, man, they've had a long day. If you were watching, they were up at 3 this morning. Now, that brings up something else. Hello, Jake. There's a question that came up today. A team called me today. Every day and just plan on riding as much as we can in the dark, and it does 2 things for us. One, we get to ride in the coolest a lot. We don't have to worry about the heat so much. And second, it gives us plenty of time any day to come up. And you know what? That's one of the smartest things I ever heard. We have explicitly in the past encouraged some teams to do that, especially before the monsoon kicks in, which is about to in the next few days. You know, for teams that are starting out the end of July when it's brutally hot, I've told people before there is nothing wrong with getting a super early start. Again, Jimmy kind of stirred up a hornet's nest when he was on a while back. He always does. He comes up with that, well, I don't know why you guys start so early. Well, one reason is because it's hot, and it wasn't hot when Jimmy did it. So, hello, Justin, and you know who it was. So, I think that's smart, and I myself have done it that way. Now, I've never gotten 12:01, but I usually get going like around 3 in the morning. I try to get going really, really early, and I try to be where I'm going to be every afternoon by no later than 3, 4, 5 o'clock, because peak heat in the Intermountain West is typically around 5 or 6 in the afternoon. Somewhere between 4 and 7 is really safe, kind of depending on the day. So if you can get where you're going before 4 o'clock, you're in pretty good shape. The only problem with getting going at 12:01, as I explained to the team that I spoke with today, is that a lot of hotels don't have your room ready before 2. So if you come rolling into some place, you know, if you're done at noon, you're going to have to find something to do for a couple hours before you can go chill out. So 2 o'clock is really common time that you can check in, 2 to 2:30. But I think that's nothing but a good idea. You get to ride at night when it's cool. I personally really like riding at night better. Some of the transfer sections are actually much safer at night. When you're riding down some of these dirt roads and stuff, or some of these quad trails, you can see headlights coming at night that you can't see coming in the daytime. There are some sections of the tour that I much prefer to ride at night if I could possibly arrange it. For instance, the whole Magruder corridor. It is a much simpler, safer experience at night than it is in the daytime because you can see headlights coming from a long way off. So when you're going around some of those big forever hairpins climbing up towards that lookout up there, Salmon Mountain Lookout, you can see the headlights coming from miles away. You can see them reflecting off the sides of the canyons. In the daytime, you don't see any of that, and every once in a while you come around a corner and there is somebody in a F-150 doing a four-wheel drift coming around the corner, and you're going to end up as a hood ornament if you're not really careful. So you can actually go faster at night through some of that stuff and more safely. Side hills disappear at night when you can't see what's down there. I've never done Stevens Peak in the daytime. They tell me it's quite exciting. The only thing I know about it is there's a big rock right in the middle of it that wants to bump you about 4 feet in the air if you hit it at speed. But I don't know anything about the side hill because I've never seen it. I've been out there once when there was kind of a moon, but it was a little bit cloudy. Side hills disappear at night. You don't see them. When you don't see them, they don't cause nearly as much concern. It's just psychology. The only disadvantage, two disadvantages actually, to spending a lot of your time riding at night are that it gets cold at night everywhere along the tour. So with the weather starting to cool down a little bit now, when you're out there at night, you better be prepared to ride in some cold weather. And I've been so cold riding at night on the tour, even in places like Chalice. You'd be amazed at how quickly it cools down after dark up in the mountains. So if you're up around 8,000 or 9,000 feet, once the sun goes down, temperature's going to drop 40 or 50 degrees really fast in some places. I've had to take my gloves off and put my hands as close as I can to my header to keep my fingers from going numb. And I've had to do that several times riding through some of those places at night. Heated grips are for pussies. And tell anybody that has a question that you heard that from me. Anyway, when you try to wind me up, dude, what do you think's going to happen? So, and the other disadvantage is that you are much more likely to encounter wildlife at night. Now, you're not likely to encounter them while you're actually riding. What you're likely to encounter is when you stop to eat or you stop to take a rest. And the team that I was discussing this earlier said, well, has anybody ever been eaten by a mountain lion on tour? And not any official tour riders I know about, but I and many others have had encounters with wildlife that we wish we could have avoided. And my two were at night in both times. So on the tour of Idaho, when it comes to wildlife, this is something we've talked about before. There's roughly 3 things that you need to be worried about. And in ascending order, these are mountain lions. Most mountain lions don't want anything to do with you, but occasionally, there are some situations, especially when you're stopped, where you could end up with a mountain lion problem. That's the big problem I had. I actually got stalked by a mountain lion one night. I had a mechanical, and I had to stop, and I built a little fire, was sitting there, and I saw what I thought was an owl staring at me from some trees, and it just kept getting closer and closer. And then at one point I figured out that was not an owl at all. That was a big-ass mountain lion. He was a pretty big rascal, too, and he kept me. He was never more than 50 feet away all night long. The next thing that you're going to encounter is a bear. Now, all of you are going to see a bear at some point during the tour this year. It'll probably be a black bear. Occasionally, you will see a grizzly bear. I've seen them. I'm sure Sean Smith has seen them. I know Brent Asper saw one, came right up on one. Generally, they're going to take off. You're not going to have a problem with that because a motorcycle makes a lot of noise. You're not like a mountain biker or a hiker that can kind of surprise them. They're going to hear you coming for miles. But again, it's when you're stopped that there can be an issue, and especially at night. Now, the third thing, and the one that really scares the hell out of me, is a moose. The moose is the most dangerous animal you or anybody else, statistically, is going to encounter out on the tour of Idaho. Moose will absolutely hold their ground. I've come riding up on a moose before, and I thought it was a tree blocking the trail because they don't move. They'll sit there and stare at you. Then all of a sudden, you're going, oh, shit. And you better be able to pick that motorcycle up by the forks and the rear shock or something and turn it around really quick if it's on a side hill, because a moose will charge you and will knock you right on your ass and then will stomp you. And they're just aggressive animals, and they hold their ground. And they're not happy until they've charged you. There was a trail around here that got closed a couple years ago. It got closed because there's a kidney doctor around here. He's a real rich guy. He's always in the newspaper. He's like one of these real fashionable local dudes. And he was out riding his $10,000 mountain bike with his $5,000 Lycra outfit, and he saw a moose, and it scared him, and they actually ended up closing the trail for a long time. It's lucky you didn't kill him, because a moose will knock you on your ass, so you have to really be concerned about that. You know, snakes and things like that, I don't think you have to worry about any of that. You're going to see them, but, you're just going to roll right by them. Let's see. Sean Smith, Fish Butte. Yeah, that Jeff Stess has got a great video of he and Kent and Ness's successful trip, but there's a mountain lion standing right in the middle of the trail on Fish Butte. And, what are you going to do? There's some side hill in there. You don't have a lot of options. And I remember watching it, and he stared and stared and kind of loped off downhill a little bit. Mine didn't do that. He just stared and stared and decided to do it. We saw him on Lundy Ridge, too. That area up there is full of stuff. I've seen a bear, a mountain lion, and a moose, all of that area in there. But my mountain lion and serious one was out on the Magruder Road. I also hit a bear. I've told this story several times in PBR Monday, but a couple years ago, I actually ran into a bear. Coming down a creek bed through a bunch of willows, and the wind was blowing and the willows were shaking, but I didn't think anything of it because the wind was really blowing up the creek. And I'm riding down, and, in those willows, you can't see the trail tread. So, you're bouncing along on these rocks, and you're up on your pegs, and you're trying to finesse it as best you can. And all of a sudden, I hit something that felt like a rock, but it was soft. It was weird. It had a weird texture to it. And, your bike's on. You're wearing your helmet, so you're not really sensitive to a lot of sound because mostly you hear your bike. And, my helmets are designed to deaden noise a little bit so you don't go deaf. And bear grunting is going to be at the low end of the acoustic register anyway, and that's typically all covered up by your silencer anyway. You're not going to hear that. So I feel this, really weird rock bumping against my leg, and I'm going, what the hell's that? Then all of a sudden, there's a little clearing, and I look over, there's a bear right beside me, and this bear and I have been bouncing off each other like clackers. And he looked at me, and I looked at him, and we both had exactly the same thought. Let's get the hell out of here. But the only way out is down this trail. It's in this V-shaped little canyon in a creek. In fact, it's in the Henderson Ridge area. It's that Henderson Ridge Creek is where this happened in those willows just after that first creek crossing, and I was coming down the hill. And we bounced off each other like clackers 3 or 4 times. Finally, the first place that bear could run up that scree, he took off, and then I cleaned all the poopy out of my britches. Be mindful of your food when stopped. Absolutely. You know, you need to treat that stuff just like any other hiker. A little story. In 1980, I started going to Yosemite to climb in the middle 70s. And at first, you know, every time I go out there, I was from Kentucky, and I didn't have a lot of big wall experience. So I'd go out and do like grade 3s and 4s, but I didn't do any 5s or 6s the first few times I went out there. I did just standard types of rock climbs and some multi-pitch stuff, but nothing that was really long. None of the big walls on Half Dome or El Cap or any of that. Then finally, around 1980, I started getting, feeling my oats a little bit. And the first thing I ever wanted to do was the northwest face of Half Dome, which is the classic route on Half Dome. And we thought we could do it in 2 days, which was pretty fast back in those days because most people were still taking 3 or 4. So we go out there, and I bring these guys from Kentucky out, and they've had absolutely zero experience climbing in the West. They're Kentucky guys. And back in those days, there weren't any bears or wolves or anything back in Kentucky. I understand they've come back now, but not back in those days. So, you might see a raccoon when you were out in Red River Gorge or something, or in the Daniel Boone National Forest, but you didn't see wolves or bears or anything like that. So we come out to Yosemite, and we drive all the way out. I mean, we just absolutely red-eyed it all the way from Lexington, Kentucky to Yosemite. It's like 3 days of driving continuously to get there. In like some crummy 1975 International Harvester or something. Worst vehicle in the world, hot, no air conditioning, bouncing around, terrible suspension. We get there. We stay in Camp 4 the first night, rack up our gear the next day, put it in a haul bag, start hiking up to Yosemite, or hiking up to Half Dome. And the hike up to Half Dome is really interesting because it goes up all the way around the back of Half Dome, and then you end up on these ledges that are quite exposed just below the northwest face. You got to be a little careful working your way through there. And you end up on this really nice flat plateau right beneath the route. Well, the northwest face of Half Dome is a really popular route. And back in those days, a lot of people would try it, but they get up a few pitches, they bail off. And so when we get there, there's like 10 parties there. And I'll never forget this because that area in Yosemite is known as being the most bear-infested place in the entire national park system of the United States. Black bears everywhere. So we're up there, and they got a big bear wire about 15 feet above the ground. And first thing I tell these guys is, look, I don't care how uncomfortable it is. We're not sleeping anywhere near this bear wire. There's too many people here. It's like 10 parties, mostly Europeans, some Japanese. There's food everywhere. There's guys sitting there, eating out of cans and stuff, and, rinsing out the can right on the ground and stuff like that. And we're going, this is not going to be good. So we go a few hundred yards away and find a less desirable place, but it's well away from the bear wire. And everybody's like camped right under the bear wire, which is the dumbest thing you can do. Sean Smith knows all about this. And he could probably tell you where this story is going. So about midnight that night, we're laying there, and it's a beautiful moonlit night. The moon's just out, and, you can see everything. All the granite reflects a lot of the moonlight, and so it's like the valley is lit up by this really cool artificial lighting. We're laying there in bivy bags. It's a little bit cold, and I'm having a little bit of a hard time falling asleep because it's a little chilly. Laying there in the bivy bag, all of a sudden I hear click, 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 the unmistakable sound of a black bear walking across granite slabs. Sure enough, this black bear walks up and sniffs us. And having spent a lot of time in Yosemite, a black bear is mostly, they're like nuisances. They're like dogs. You just say, get the hell out of here, throw a rock at them. In fact, in Camp 4, we used to pile up rocks and we'd take turns. So about every week or so, it'd come around to be your campsite's turn to be on bear patrol for your little particular area of Camp 4. And you'd have a pile of rocks, and every morning, 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, there's some half-naked camper running through Camp 4 in Yosemite throwing rocks, chasing the bear away. So I'm up there, and this bear comes by, and he starts sniffing, and he sniffs at me, and I just kicked him right in the snout. And, get the hell out of here. Go on, out of here. Bear snorts, moves along, sniffs my buddies. There's no food. And he just wanders off. Click, 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 click. Well, my friends are like, when this experience is over, they're like, we got to get out of here. Did you see that? That's like the biggest bear I ever saw in my life. He's the size of an elephant. I'm going, no. It just kind of looks that way in the dark and shadows. Bear's probably the size of a dog. It's just fine. So I'm laying there and I go, well, I know where this bear's going. He's going in the general direction and he's following his nose. I better go over and save this poor bear from these knucklehead Europeans and Japanese guys. So I get up, dress myself, and I just finding my hiking shoes. I'm sliding them on when all of a sudden I hear this commotion coming from over where the bear wire is. And I go, all right, let's go save this poor bear. So I walk over there. And these guys have a big bonfire going. And sure enough, they're all camped right underneath the bear wire. There's a bonfire there. And I look up, and this bear, there was a Forest grade 6 haul bag hanging from that haul wire. And that doesn't mean anything to anybody except possibly Sean. But it's a big, heavy haul bag. It probably had 100 pounds worth of stuff in it. The bottom of the haul bag is probably 12 or 15 feet off the ground. And this bear is standing up on its hind legs and swatting that haul bag for complete loops around the bear wire. I mean, it's an incredible display of strength and tenacity. And this bear is the biggest freaking bear I've ever seen in my life because no normal-sized bear could manage that. This bear is freaking huge, so my friends were right and I was wrong. I looked at that bear and said, well, I think I'm just going to let this situation resolve itself. This looks like natural selection at play to me. Those bears in Yosemite are the smartest on the planet. They know how to open every make of car on the planet. They're better than professional car thieves. Let me put this up. This is awesome because it's true. Each vehicle for the food that shouldn't be in the vehicle. Dude, they can open up anything. The bears in Yosemite have been so customized to food that they can get into anything. Nothing is safe in Yosemite unless it's hanging from a bear wire. That's probably their least favorite place to go. I saw somebody mention wolves a while ago, too, and that may have been Sean. You will see wolves when you're out in the tour as well, but generally they'll give you a wide berth. Let's see. Another good reason for chainsaws is the most common reason to stop in the dark is a downed tree. Silky saws are silent other than your swearing. That's pretty good. I like that. So you will encounter wildlife, and, bear spray is good. Some people carry pistols. I carry a pistol in general when I'm out riding, but in Tour Vito style riding, I'm not sure I would because it's weight that I don't think I can justify, but I don't know. I haven't done a tour in a few years, but I sure have ridden with a pistol every time I go. Now, if you're going to take a firearm, everybody thinks they know how to use one, but a lot of the guys I know that carry them are actually trained. They're professionals, they're ex-military or they're police or something like that. But if you're like an amateur shooter, you're probably better with the bear spray. You're less likely to do something bad. And you need to practice, too. You need to practice your bear spray. You need to practice your quick draw. All that stuff is not something that you want to be figuring out on the fly. Yeah, I have a Glock 10 millimeter, Glock 29, Gen 4. And a big issue with me was, do you really want to run around with the round in the chamber all the time? Glock's got a pretty good trigger safety on it, and there's a lot of debate about whether or not you should do that. Mostly the gun guys say, yeah, you can basically do anything to those things and they won't go off. But I'm not so sure they've tried like tumbling halfway down a hillside through sticks and weeds and stuff like that. I just don't know. So it was a big deal for me. Do I actually want to run around with the round in the chamber all the time? And then I started practicing my quick draw, and it's like half the time if there's a round in the chamber. If you got to pull the thing out, cock it, put it around the chamber, it just takes a lot longer. So those are the kind of things you need to find out. You need to find out what happens when you deploy bear spray. Get a dummy can, which doesn't cost anything. $5 for a dummy can. See how the damn thing works. Just practice with it. Confirming that we can get gas in Downey. Yep, there's gas in Downey. Best place to get the gas is right just before you get into Downata. There's a little out and back to the gas station there, and there's actually two places. That brings up an interesting thing that happened today with both teams. Malad is on the Tour of Idaho one time, not two times. And every year I tell people this, and every year people forget. If you go back to Malad after you leave it, I'm going to have some questions as to what you're doing there. And that's potential. In fact, it's a probable off-route penalty if you go back. It kind of depends on what the heck's going on, but I don't like that. I don't want you going back to Malad after you leave. There's plenty of places to get gas, plenty of places to get food. So don't go back to Malad after you leave Malad, unless it's something real serious, because when I see that, it's very likely that you're going to be assessed some sort of an off-route penalty, and it's potential DQ. I mean, we tell everybody in day one, you kind of got to stick to the program. It's the one day that we don't allow a lot of freelancing. Now, I haven't done that to anybody in years, but it's something that you should be aware of. Going back to Malad invites some serious scrutiny as to what the hell you're doing. And so if you have a good answer for me later on, that's okay. But if you don't have a good answer, it's going to be at the minimum an off-route penalty. The same goes with like Flags West truck stop and all that stuff. None of that stuff's on the Tour of Idaho. You can get gas at Downey. You should have no trouble getting gas in Downey. So just ride to Downey, get gas. You can get gas at Lava Hot Springs, and you should be just fine. But don't be going back to Malad unless it's really, really important. And don't be going to any of these other gas stations along the way either. Just stick with the route, and we tell people Downey and Lava Hot Springs, and you're fine. Let's see. What else? We talked about the little tactical problem that 2.5 had today. They're working that out. They're in Reed Canyon as we speak. Talked about the weather. It's improving. Let's talk a little bit about some of these mystery sections, because I've asked friends of mine to go ride them. Sean's with us tonight. He's ridden some of this stuff. I asked some of the other guys that helped me with putting together the tour. Every year I put together a group that works on next year's tour. And I'm starting to put that group together this summer, too. As soon as this Tour of Idaho season is over, I'll be reaching out and asking some of you tour vets to help with the 2023 group. It's usually a fairly small group. There's about 10 or 12 people in it, and there's some carryover from year to year, but I form a new group every year. And in that group this year, I've sent people out and said, look, would you guys please ride this stuff and give me a reality check? Let me know if my sense of it is your sense of it. And two consistent sets of comments have come back. The one is that the mystery sections on the Tour of Idaho are some of the best riding all these guys have ever done. They all say the same thing. This stuff is freaking fantastic. The second thing they say is that some of these trails are kind of hard. There's one in particular that's got a few miles in it that you're going to be doing some grunting on. And when people tell me, but what about this one trail? I say, wait, I know exactly what you're talking about, and I'm always right. It's an example of where slow guys like me, I don't think encounter as much trouble, because the stuff that bedeviled everybody on this section of trail that they're talking about didn't bother me as much. Well, there's two reasons. One reason was the time of year I did it. I did it really late in the year, and this trail involves several very technical creek crossings. So I did it later in the year when there wasn't as much water in the creek, the rocks weren't as slick, more of the tree roots were dry. But the second thing is, when I ride up on stuff like that, I automatically get off my bike and start pushing. I don't try to ride that stuff. To me, it's just the juice isn't worth the squeeze. You know, maybe I save a minute by just barreling across a creek or jumping over big logs and stuff like that. Maybe I save a little bit of time doing that. Maybe, I just had this conversation with a tour rider a while ago. Maybe I blow it big time and I spend 90 minutes in that spot trying to make up for that mistake. I don't care what anybody thinks about the way I ride. So if I get to a place on a side hill and I think it's faster for me to push for 15 feet, that's exactly what I'm going to do. I almost always dismount and push across creeks. Unless I've ridden a creek many times, I know there's a clean line, I know I can see what I need to see. One particular hazard about creek crossings, which Sean will know about because he's a physicist, is that the depth of that creek can be extremely difficult to judge depending upon the time of day and the angle of the light. And right around high noon, it's usually pretty easy, but in the morning and later in the afternoon, it's very easy to severely underestimate the depth of a creek. And you're going to be really surprised when you think a creek that's 6 inches deep that you've never ridden across before turns out to be, 2.5, 3 feet deep. And that's a very, very common misjudgment that people make. So I just get off and push across that stuff, and I don't worry about it. And I think some of these folks that I've sent in, who are all more talented riders than I am, I think that, they got in and, they just rode all that stuff. They rode across all those creeks and rode over all those wet tree roots and stuff like that. And I didn't do that. It was slower, but I just pushed across a lot of that stuff. But I also did it late last fall when a lot of that stuff was dry, where now it would not be. But there is one section of trail that has got some creek crossings in it that are going to be devils, some of you. But I'm telling you what, the juice is absolutely worth the squeeze, because when you get to the end of this little grunt section with these creek crossings, you're going to go up through some rocks. You're not going to like that very much either. But when you get to where you're going to go, wow. And you're going to be going, wow, for about the next hour. It is very, very cool. Most of these trails are not brushed incredibly well, so sometimes they're hard to find in spots. That's the day 3 stuff. The day 4 stuff, everybody's talking about. Yeah, we didn't have nobody's done the challenge section or any of the bonuses on that day yet. They just ridden the main route, but everybody really liked that. They thought it was awesome stuff. And everybody really liked the day 7 stuff, although one group got lost on day 7, and they got lost right in a place where I tell you the directions. It's very easy to get lost here, so you got to look for that. So far, we've had 3 teams withdrawn the last couple of days, and I appreciate people taking the time to contact me and say we're withdrawing instead of just not showing up. You're in good standing with me as long as you do that. That's fine. But when you draw and you say, well, we're going to come out and do a T2, that's fine, but I'm not giving up any of the mystery sections. There was a team that contacted me earlier, and they said, well, we think we figured most of it out. There's just this one little area, and I doubt that you figured most of it out. It'd be extraordinary if you did. You might have bits and pieces if you kind of know where you're going to be spending the night, but you haven't figured most of it out. I can guarantee that. The people that I sent in there who know the area were kind of surprised at what they ran into. But at any rate, T2 does not involve any mystery sections. So what I told everybody in PBR Monday stands. When you get to Arco, just ride to Mackey. It's pretty easy to figure that stuff out. When you get to Highway 93 on day 7, it'll be day 6 for you. But when you get there, just either you can't ride the FS50 in because of the fire, so you'll have to slab it in the Salmon. But it's a really pretty ride down the canyon. You'll be fine. It looks like when you get to Salmon, you're not going to be able to ride Moose Creek Trail because that's where the fire is. And as these teams get a little bit farther north, I'm going to start working out what we're going to do. That situation has kind of stabilized a little bit, so I think we'll have a good plan for everybody. And I think what it's going to amount to is you get a full day off in Salmon this year. So you get a rest day in Salmon, which should really help. And people who I know and trust have gone to that Wild Side Power Sports, and they say no. They're actually very happy to see us, and things are great. So I'm pleased as punch to be able to relate that. Look, when we first put Salmon on 15 years ago, I used to like going in there. Those guys were cool. Then for a few years, it was just terrible. They treated me and everybody else poorly, and it wasn't just me or a few other people. It was report after report. These guys basically didn't want anything to do with us, and they charged through the nose for really simple stuff. So I'm very pleased to hear that that's evidently not the case now. Who knows what happens? They got a new staff. Maybe somebody bought it or something. I don't know. But it sounds like it's okay. Salmon is a good-sized town, and you won't mind spending a full day there. In fact, you'll appreciate the day off if it turns out being that way. All right, so I have managed to talk for more than a half an hour, and I don't see anything that looks like a question here. So if you guys got questions, you better come up with them right now, or else I'm going to be watching Better Call Saul. Any word on North Fork store? It's open, but I don't know if it's going to make sense to stay there. Let's just see. There's rain is coming through like a son of a gun. They have flash flood warnings all over the southeast part of the state. So it could be that situation really improves. I just don't know. Let's wait until we see what happens. But right now, I would plan on spending 2 days in Salmon. So we'll just have to see how it goes. I haven't talked to Cass lately because she's really got a lot on her mind, and I don't want to burden her with this. The fire burned down right into their backyard. Something, if you follow me in social media, you know I have a little experience with that myself because it happened to me just a few days ago, and you have bigger things on your mind. So, Jeff, that's right. So I don't normally do this, but Jeffrey Brandner is a good guy. I like him a lot. After a while, I follow you all on Facebook, and I get to know some of you. And Jeff's one of my favorite people to follow. He's an artist, and the guy does some wonderful work. You should absolutely follow this guy on Facebook and see what he does professionally. It's first-rate work, and it's the kind of thing that's hard as hell to find in the modern era. It really is. When I look at stuff that looks like it was built or planned or executed by people that gave a shit about what they're doing, that's a good day for me. And his stuff is outstanding. So I like following him on social media just to see the stuff that he puts together. But he and I have some fairly similar political views. And he PM'd me today and said, hey, can we change our team from home on the range to build back better? And after I picked myself up off the floor laughing, I said, absolutely. And that's because we've been exchanging this series of memes about if build back better were a weld or if build back better were a pistol. And if you follow me on Facebook, you can see what that stuff's all about. So, Jeffrey, good call, buddy. I'm really glad we got to rename your team. Yeah, I see a little bit of discussion here about North Fork. You know, the fact that it's open doesn't necessarily mean you should stay there. You know, maybe you should go in and buy lunch or something, but that place will be full of firefighters because it's the closest place to the fire. You should talk to Cass and find out what the deal is. And you're not going to like the air quality up there anyway because it's going to be terrible. So just wait until we figure out what it is, and then we'll get it all put together and come up with a recommendation. I'll talk to Cass, and we'll figure out what you're going to be doing up there. But you might get to spend 2 days in Salmon, which would be pretty awesome because you get a full rest day off. It looks like a lot of the stuff that's north of that Salmon River Road, you're going to be able to ride. Now, you're going to have to get into it a different way, but that's easy to do. But you'll be able to ride it. All right. I'm still not seeing any questions, and I'm about 2 minutes away from saying I need to see Better Call Saul. I think tonight's the episode where you're going to see Walter White return and Jesse. Let's see if I missed anything here. Nope, not really. Looks like, okay, that's all I have to tell you. The mystery sections, I'm coming back with nothing but positive reviews in those. One of them is maybe a little harder than I would like it to be. I don't think it's challenge section difficult, but you know, it's probably really not worse than, you know, sections of Kent's Canyon and Robber's Roost and stuff like that you got to ride anyway. It's just that it will strike you as odd in the middle of the day where you run into this mile that's way out of character of everything else, especially on this particular trail, because the first trail's about 10 miles long, and basically the first 8 miles are completely simple. Third gear, just rolling on the throttle, and then all of a sudden you cross a creek and you start riding up through some rocks, and things get a little bit interesting after that. Have one team report that they had a bit of a hard time on the very last trail on D3 Mystery, that they it went through some again, I rode it in the fall and it was all brushed. Sean Smith, it will be a memorable day. Day 3 will be the stuff you will remember. Jim Spooner, should I wait until the night before to get my beacon working? Sounds reasonable. That's been an issue this year. You know, people in Malad, you know, sending me brand new beacon links, and you know, they one thing I told everybody is, look, make sure they work. Upload some points to make sure they work before you leave. Please don't be doing that the night before because it's just stress you don't need. And that hadn't happened this year. Every team has had a beacon issue. And then the best part is, I tell everybody when I send them the number, look, make sure that you enable incoming messages from this number. And there's a team out today that I couldn't contact all day because neither of them had that feature enabled. It's very simple to do when you're sitting at your computer. It's just a box you check. And if you have that enabled, if I see you about to screw up, I will reach out to you and say, do you realize that you probably don't want to do what you're getting ready to do? But I couldn't talk to these guys today because neither of them had that box checked, and nothing I can do. And I hate that. I hate to see people drive all the way out here and take the time off and do what they got to do. I'm going to try to help you avoid some mistakes. But if I can't contact you, then that's just not possible. So Jim's being a wise guy, and that's okay because Jim's in this year's tour group, and I've been venting to those guys about this PLB issue a little bit. Please get your PLB stuff sorted out before you get here. Oh, yeah, Sean last year. Dude, I was stressed over that because you were so close to making it. And I'm not going to talk about this publicly, but Sean had an issue, and it's another one of these kind of things where, you're blowing bubbles by that time. You're not thinking clearly, and he posted something up on the Facebook page that had anybody taken him up on that offer, he would have been disqualified. And so I immediately got out there and said, I'll take care of this. Do not do what he asked you to do. And then he got back right away and said, oh, man, I wasn't thinking. And I completely understand that. I get that. But the closer you get to the end, the first few days, kind of we're watching, but we're going, well, let's see what happens when you start getting up around Lowell and in that area there. You make it that far, then all of a sudden we're all thinking you got a good chance. And when you do something, when you have like some horrible mechanical up there, way up north somewhere, everybody's feeling bad. If you ride your bike 900 feet down into a lake you're not supposed to go to, everybody's feeling really bad. But we will try to figure out a way within the rules to get you through the thing. Well, I'll give you some advice. I'll say, this is what you need to do if you want to be able to continue. This is what you absolutely cannot do. And Sean was successful last year. It was one of the best tours I ever saw. It was pretty cool. It's a very that's why he's on here a lot. He has a great story to tell. And his tour was a difficult one. He broke some ground by carrying a small saw the whole way. He was a soloist. And I think he came out thinking about it different in the rear end than he was thinking going into the front. And there's nothing but good about that. All right, I'm done. Don't have anything else to talk about tonight. I'll do one of these maybe next week. Let's see. During tour season, I think the better thing to do is to just get some of these guys on to talk and, do them throughout the week and leave them up, and then you all can watch them as you want. I'm going to try to get Pure Prairie League in here tomorrow. They said they're coming to Pocatello tomorrow. So I'll try to get them in, and we'll do a little broadcast tomorrow, and we'll just leave it up so you can watch it anytime you want, since most of you will be at work. As always, thank all of you for watching this. Thank everybody in the Tour of Idaho community. I get way too much credit for this, and I'm sort of the figurehead of this, but there's so many people that do a lot of work on this. Sean's out sawing trees all the time. When we brought that guy in, we brought the tree terminator into the fold. And all these folks that went out and wrote all this mystery stuff that I put together, for some of these guys came way up from Utah to go out and write all that stuff. And they're good people that give me feedback that I trust. There are some people that I trust implicitly because I know there's going to be no ego or anything else in what they tell me. Those are the people I give this data to and say, would you please go out and give me a reality check on it? So there's a lot of people that are involved in this. There's a guy watching tonight, Ralph Jones, has helped me immensely over the years with all this. So the stuff you don't like, that probably is me. But the stuff you like, there were a whole bunch of people that were involved in all of that. You're welcome. Jim, have a great week. All college football practice fires off on Wednesday, so that's when your life gets going in earnest. Well, once again, you've wasted, what is it tonight? Where are we at here? 44 minutes and 43 seconds with a complete knucklehead. And tonight you absolutely did because there were no guests on here. I don't know why you all do this, but I'm grateful as hell that you do. Try to get Pure Prairie League in here tomorrow. So if you guys are seeing this, make sure you get a hold of me sometime tomorrow, and I'll bring you into the studio here, and we'll have a good time. You guys were supposed to be representing the Bluegrass State. And Jeff Stess and I may have to bring Jeff on if we get you guys in the studio so we can tune you up about how you represent the Bluegrass State when you show up to ride the Tour of Idaho. In fact, maybe the DJ may ought to interview these guys. We'll have to see how that works. Be seeing y'all. Cheers.